welcome back to my channel. She be blogging. It's your girl She, and I'm back today with another video. I hope you are well. Thank you for coming back to my channel. If you are new, I'm She, and welcome. Welcome to She Be Blogging. Here at She Be Blogging, we do not just cover one topic. We definitely talk about a variety of different things. So please make sure you subscribe so that you never miss another video. Okay, I am starting this series where every Wednesday I upload a true crime video, and I am ecstatic. I'm excited. I'm in heaven. I love true crime. I live for a good true crime mystery murder story. Like, I love it all. Like, that's my thing. So today I am here to discuss a true crime video or a true crime story. Yeah, a true crime story. Today I'm going to be talking about Harold Frederick Shipman. He was a British general practitioner who was believed to have killed over 215 of his own patients. Cray cray. Cray cray. Definitely one of my worst fears is, trusting someone or putting like my life in someone's hands who's supposed to be there to take care of me or help me, and they're ultimately the person who just send me on my way. So before I get started, I do want to add a disclaimer. This video is intended for mature audiences only. I do not get graphic in this video, but there's definitely some things that's discussed that are for mature audiences. Okay? All right, now let's get into the video. Okay, so Harold Frederick Shipman, also known to his friends as Fred, was born on January the 14th, 1946. He's a Capricorn. Let that sink in. Okay. He was born in Nottinghamshire, England. He was the middle child of 3 children. His father, his name was also Harold Frederick Shipman. He was a lorry driver, and his mom's name was Vera Britton. And both of his parents were devout Methodists. Okay, so in school, basically Fred was kind of known as the quiet, shy child that kept to himself, but then there was also another side of him when it came to sports, where he definitely excelled and shined, where people thought that he was amazing. One of the sports that he played throughout school was rugby, and he was pretty good. He was really, really, really good. And he was mostly known for the sports that he played in school, because of course outside of sports, as I stated, he was just kind of shy and timid, and pretty much kept to himself. He was also great at distance running, and he was also the vice captain of the athletics team. Okay, so when he was 17, that's when his world just kind of took a turn for the worse. Throughout the years of his life, he witnessed doctors, or several doctors, coming in to administer medicine to his mom. She had been battling lung cancer for some years, so they would come in and out of the house to give her morphine to help with the pain. Ultimately, in 1963, she did succumb to the lung cancer that she had, and passed away. So one of Fred's friends recall him and Fred walking to school and basically just chatting about the weekend. And the friend asked Fred, hey, how was your weekend? What did you do? Fred explained that his mom passed, and his friend was like, oh my gosh, are you okay? Like, what did you do? And Fred was just like, yeah, I'm okay. I went for a jog at 2 or 3 in the morning in the pouring rain. Now, some people did look at that as being odd, but you know, like the kid just lost his mom. Who are we to judge on how he grieved, his mom no longer being here? But people also think that this action also sparked him, and kind of like twisted his mind into the person that he became, because basically what happened to his mom, where the doctors were coming and giving her morphine, that ultimately ended up being his drug of choice when he, murdered his patients. Then, fast forward to November of 1966, he did meet Primrose May Oxby, who later became his wife. When he met her, she was a window model. Window model. Okay. So she was like a really attractive woman. Of course, he found her attractive and pursued her. And her family was not really too pleased with Fred. They did not really like him. Not quite sure why, but they were not fond of their relationship. Fred and Primrose ended up having their first daughter, and her family was just not happy about that. So they secretly wed and then went on to have 3 more kids together. Ultimately, Fred graduated from Leeds School of Medicine in 1970, and from then on, he began working at Pontefract General Infirmary in Pontefract, West Riding of Yorkshire. That was a lot of words to kind of get out all at once, but I hope you guys caught that. He took his first position as a general practitioner at Abram Medical Center in Todmorden in 1974. Okay, so it was during this time, basically like 2 years later, he was caught forging prescriptions of
Few moments later.
Demerol for his personal use. So, Fred would begin to have these stages of blacking out. He blacked out twice at his home in the bathroom, and either he or his wife ended up calling a partner of his to come over and see, how he was doing. Took him to a consultant who eventually diagnosed him as having epilepsy, and said that he couldn't drive because of this epilepsy. So it was ultimately up to his wife to drive him back and forward to wherever he needed to go, because of course he could not drive himself. It was later revealed that Fred was forging prescriptions of Demerol for personal use. Once this came out, he was convicted of 8 counts of fraud. I don't know. It was 8 counts of something. This is when he kind of was like completely honest with what he was doing. He was at the mercy of the court. He told them what exactly was going on, and everybody pretty much accepted his truthfulness, and they liked that he was being truthful about what he was doing. So ultimately, he was fined £600, and he briefly attended a drug rehabilitation center in York. All right, so 2 years after that, he did meet up with these 6 partners who owned Donnybrook's Medical Center. He did go there to interview, and they were extremely impressed with his resume. They liked him, but ultimately, what sold them on, giving him another chance to be in the medical field was that he was honest. He was forthcoming about his charges. He was forthcoming about abusing Demerol for his personal use. And ultimately, they liked his honesty. So they did decide to give him a second chance. So he started to work at Donnybrook Medical Center in Hyde. Hyde? I want to say it's Hyde. Here is where basically he threw himself into the local community. He was definitely working hard as a general practitioner. He was working hard as a doctor. He also became a member of the local organizations like John Ambulance Brigade, the Scouts, and the local school governor. Which is so odd, after like discovering what this man was capable of, and what he did. It's so weird that he was just such just prominent member of society, but at the end of the day, like, he was just murdering people. Anywho, so he was definitely a popular person in this small town of Hyde, population of like 6,000. And people like just cling to him. They wanted to, be a part of like him and what he had going on. In 1993, Fred decided to part ways with the six partners at Donnybrook Medical Center. Of course, the partners were not really happy with him wanting to leave, but this was something that he had contemplated on for weeks. His mind was made up, and he was leaving. And he also told them that he's going to take his 3,000 patients along with him, and there was nothing that they can do about it. Anywho, but now since he has his own place called the surgery, he was actually able to really dive into what he wanted to do, what he was passionate about, which was murdering people. So, in March of 1998, Linda Reynolds of Brook Surgery in Hyde expressed concerns to John Pillard, which was the coroner at the time, for the South Manchester District, about the high cases of Fred's patients that are being cremated. So basically, she was concerned about the high number of people, of Fred's patients that were being cremated. And I'm guessing back then, like when, and I don't know, maybe still now, I'm not quite sure how that works, but you need 2 signatures for someone to be cremated. So Fred would sign off, and then he would have to send it to Linda for her to sign off on it. And so she's noticing how she just keeps getting these high number of people being cremated. Like basically his patients are dying, like they're dying, and it's an alarming number from him. So basically she went to John Pillard, the coroner, and was like, hey, something doesn't quite seem right here. Like I'm getting quite a few patients like a day that I have to sign off on to be cremated, and it's like it's his patients. It's always like his patients. So After that, the coroner was like, okay, yeah, maybe you're on to something. Let's dig a little bit deeper into this. So they did go to the police to report this to them, about their findings. But ultimately, that didn't really go anywhere because the police didn't have sufficient enough evidence to have anything stick. They did arrest Fred, but I mean, there wasn't really much evidence for them to, for them to hold it. Um, so between April of 1998 and September of 19 no. So between April of 1998 and September of 1998, it was said Fred killed three additional people. Also, a taxi driver by the name of John Shaw realized that something was wrong, that there was like an alarming rate of Fred's patients being murdered. He did want to go to the police and tell them about this, but his wife was like, no, you don't want to risk going to the police and basically accusing this well known doctor of being a murderer. Like, what if you're wrong? So, uh, John decided to not go to the police. But as things just started to come about where more people were starting to chatter about what they suspected was going on, he did eventually pick up the phone to alert the authorities of what he suspected. And he put together the pieces where he feels like Fred at least murdered about 21 of his patients. Now, the taxi driver came to that conclusion based on things that he's just been witnessing over the years. Okay, so basically, it seems like Fred was murdering his patients, and his drug of choice was morphine. Now, one might ask, or you might ask, how was he getting all of this morphine to kill all of these people? That is a very good question, and I have a really good answer. So, there was a man. There was a man named Jim King. Jim King was a patient of Fred's. When uh, Jim went to Fred, he was being treated for cancer. He was being treated for cancer. So once he went to Fred to be treated for cancer, Fred was giving him, he was going through chemotherapy. And basically, Fred was giving him Demerol and morphine. Fred was giving him morphine. And basically, when you have a patient that has a like a terminal illness, you can request a large amount of morphine, and no one questioning you about it, because they're like, okay, you have these patients that have this major illness, and this is what you need to give them to help with the pain. So that's how he was getting all of this morphine, and no one ever looked at him sideways, like, what are you doing? What are you doing with all this? So, but the crazy thing is, Jim never had cancer. 3 times the doctors called to tell Fred that Jim did not have cancer, but he never told Jim the news. So Jim was constantly getting chemo, constantly taking morphine day in and day out, when he didn't have to. So basically, all of the chemo treatments that he was going through, as well as the morphine, was basically causing Jim's health to deteriorate. So Jim's dad, which was also a patient of Fred, went and was asking questions like, what's going on with my son? What is going on with his health? You're supposed to be making him better, but it seems like he's only getting worse. Like, what is going on? So Fred was not really happy with the line of questioning that was coming from Jim's father. So ultimately, on December 24th, Jim's dad winds up dead. And of course, Jim feels as if Fred did it because his dad was asking too many questions about his health. So, bam. So, that's how Fred was getting the meds to give to the other patients to kill them. Now, throughout the years, he has, killed or killed. He killed um, a lot of people, allegedly. But ultimately, he got a little bit too greedy. And what he did with his last victim ultimately led to him being caught. Now, um, okay, so basically, on June 24th, 1998, Fred was seen leaving the home of Kathleen Gruddy. Yeah, Gruddy. Um, and one of her neighbors noticed that, basically Fred walked himself out. Kathleen did not accompany him to the door, so he let himself out. And he didn't speak to the neighbor. The neighbor didn't speak to him. He basically left. She went inside of her home. So, it later that day they discovered that Kathleen, um, was dead. Um, and they also determined that Fred was the last person to see her alive. So, shortly afterwards, her daughter, which is Angela Woodruff, did receive a letter in the mail from a solicitor, um, from a solicitor Burgess, informing her that he received a copy of her mom's will in the mail, and it didn't really seem authentic. He had never met Kathleen at all, so she was not the solicitor that he was going to basically handle her business, because her daughter Angela, indeed herself, was a solicitor. So basically he called her and he's like, hey, I have your mom's will, something looks fishy, like I just want to make you aware of what's going on. So Angela takes the drive back to Hyde to see, like what's going on, what's up with her mom. Basically, she gets her hands on the will, and she sees that her mom leaves her estate to Fred. So in the will, the mom is leaving her £386,000 estate to Fred, and nothing to her daughter, which was extremely weird because, as I stated, her daughter is a solicitor, and 10 years before her mom's death, her mom made her will and Angela had it. So Angela became Detective Angela because she wanted to track down the two witnesses that actually signed the will as a witness, and she tracked down two people that actually worked at the surgery. And one of the guys actually spoke to her, and she wanted to know, hey, like, what is going on? Why did you sign this? And the guy was like, well, I thought that I was signing medical papers. He said he came into the room, he saw Fred, he saw like an older woman sitting there who he now knows is Kathleen sitting there. And Fred asked her, hey, are you sure you want to do this? She was like, yeah. So he handed the paper to the guy, but he said the paper was folded, so he never really knew what he was signing. He just figured that it was like medical papers. So he slid the paper over to him. He signed it. The girl that came in as well, she signed it. And he said when he looked at the paper, he already noticed that Kathleen had already signed the paper. So with that information, Kathleen went to the police for them to look into this. Also, when Angela got her mom's death certificate, she also noticed that Fred was the person who signed her mom's death certificate, and then for the reason of death, he noted old age, when indeed that was not the case at all. So because they suspected some sort of foul play going on, her body was exhumed and examined, and they found large traces of heroin inside of her body. And so basically when they asked Fred about this, like, hey, do you know anything about this, yada yada yada, Fred was like, oh yes, she was addicted to heroin. And we talked about this plenty of times. I have lots of notes entered into the system regarding this. So of course the police wanted to see the notes, and lo and behold, there were notes in his computer about this. And upon further examination, they noticed that those notes that was entered into the system was not entered in until after she was dead. So they did notice a pattern. They noticed that, like, with some of their victims, they would look at like the time that they were discovered dead, and then when those said notes was entered into the system. And with a lot of those, the notes of the death was entered into the system before the person actually died. So just further stacking more evidence up against himself. So, Fred was arrested. Yeah. They had to get him on out of here. They got that boy on September 7th, 1998. And basically when the people raided his home, they did find the typewriter that was used to forge Kathleen's will that was shipped to Brian Burgers. They did find the typewriter. So, furthermore evidence, just that's him digging. Anyway, so, basically, the police investigated other deaths that Fred had certified, and created a list of cases and investigated. They discovered a pattern of they basically discovered a pattern of him administering lethal doses of diamorphine, and signing patients' death certificate, and falsifying medical records to cover his traces. So basically, once he pumps them up with whatever drug of choice he wants to use, whether it's morphine, Demerol. Not quite sure if those are the same things, but I doubt it, because if it was the same things, they would have called it the same thing. But once he pumped them up with his drug of choice, he would go into the computer and make the medical records look however he want them to look, or even entering notes about things that like these people never discussed. Okay, Fred. So on October 5th, 1999, Fred went to trial, and he went to the Pinson Crown Court. He was charged with 15 counts of murder and 1 count of forgery. Now, during this time, Fred also, like, he always denied any sort of guilt. He basically said, even of course with all of the evidence like stacked up against him, he was just still like, nope, wasn't me. I didn't do it. I don't know what happened. I just know that it wasn't me. And after like his trial, because of course they deliberated like for 6 days. And on January the 31st of 2000, the jury found him guilty of the 15 counts of murder as well as 1 count of forgery. And he was ultimately sentenced to life imprisonment. Also, his wife, Primrose, she also stood by her man, and she denied any sort of guilt. He or his wife, like, they never made any sort of public statements, or did any sort of interviews or anything, but they definitely just maintained, Fred's innocence, and said that, he did not do it. They don't know who did it, but Fred did not do it. Fred is the only doctor in British history to be found guilty of murdering his patients. On January the 13th, 2004, 1 day before Fred's 58th birthday, he would be found in his cell hanged. He was found hanging on the window bars. It was said that he used bed sheets to ultimately end his life. He did have talks with some of the guards there about ending his own life. It wasn't 100% clear as to why he did it, but some speculate that because, of course, because he was in jail for murdering his patients, he was no longer going to get his pension. But if he survived past the age of 60, his wife wouldn't be eligible for his pension either. So, in order to make sure that she was financially stable, he ultimately killed himself so that way she would be able to receive his pension and be financially well off. So, but yeah, so they did find him inside of his Wakefield prison cell at 6:20. By 8 o'clock, he was pronounced dead. Some of the victims' families was not happy about this at all. They feel like, with him ultimately taking his life, that justice wouldn't be served. That basically they would not have the closure that they need. And they ultimately would never get the answers to why, like, what led you to do this? Why did you do this? And then of course you had some other people who was okay with it. They didn't find anything wrong with, him taking his life. They were just glad that he was no longer hearing that he's ultimately paying for the things that he did to the families. In 2002, it was concluded that he had killed at least 215 of his patients between 1975 and 1998. That is crazy. That is wild. But that definitely concludes today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. This is my first true crime video, and I hope I did well. If you guys have any comments, definitely leave them down below. Please, please, please give this video a thumbs up, and do not forget to subscribe, because I do not want you to miss the next time I upload a video. So thank you so much for sticking to the end. I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your day, and see you on the next video. Bye.